She looked at me like I was nothing more than a stain on her marble floors. Don't expect money. We didn't want you then, and we don't want you now. Those words from my biological mother, Victoria Ashworth, sliced through me like ice water. I had waited 50 years for this moment, imagining hugs, maybe even apologies, but instead, I was being dismissed in the same breath as someone asking a butler to remove the trash. What she didn't know was that my daughter Sarah was about to walk through that door, and she wasn't about to let them get away with it. But let me backtrack, because you need to understand how a 67-year-old woman ended up in a billionaire's mansion in Napa Valley, face to face with the parents who abandoned her as a newborn. 3 months earlier, after decades of searching, I finally held the answer in my hands. A simple DNA test, after years of dead ends, revealed the truth. I was the daughter of Victoria and Richard Ashworth, real estate magnates whose empire was valued at more than $2 billion. Meanwhile, I had spent my life waitressing double shifts in Toledo, Ohio, raising my daughter alone after losing my adoptive parents in a car accident when I was 19. They'd given me love, but after their deaths, I had no safety net, no one but myself. I'd fought for every dollar, every bit of stability, while my birth parents were living in a 30-room mansion, drinking wine that probably cost more than my yearly salary. Still, I wasn't walking into this meeting as a beggar. Being abandoned teaches you 2 things: resilience and a sharp tongue. I knew both would serve me well. A private investigator named Marcus Wilson had warned me that the Ashworths might not want contact, but I thought I was ready. He explained they had one acknowledged son, James, 2 years younger than me, and no mention of a daughter. For weeks, Marcus fought through their legal barricades until, finally, Victoria's assistant called. "Mrs. Ashworth can spare 30 minutes for this matter," she said, as though my entire life was some minor nuisance. But 30 minutes was more than I'd ever had. So I took it. The drive from Ohio to California gave me too much time to imagine outcomes. Would there be tears? Reconciliation? A family dinner where I finally saw where I got my stubborn streak? I'd insisted on going alone, though my daughter Sarah wanted to come. At 38, Sarah had become one of Hollywood's most bankable actresses. But to me, she was still the girl who called every Sunday and told me she loved me. She wanted to shield me from whatever pain might come, but I told her this was something I had to face myself. When I pulled up to the Ashworth estate, I nearly laughed at the sheer extravagance, the iron gates, the manicured gardens, the towering mansion. It was a different world. A butler named Thomas greeted me, eyeing me as if I might pocket the silverware. He led me through hallways lined with priceless art until we reached the conservatory, where Victoria sat waiting. 92 years old, but still formidable, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her posture stiff as a ruler. She didn't call me Dorothy or even daughter, just the child. I told her I wanted answers, not money. Why had I been given away? Her reply was as cold as her eyes. You were inconvenient. Richard and I were young, focused on building our fortune. A baby was a distraction. A distraction. I had spent 67 years wondering who I was, and in her eyes, I was little more than an obstacle she swept aside. Then she added, with unshakable calm, "We didn't want you then, and we don't want you now." Go. I stood, smoothed my dress, and said, "Well, that's clear enough. Beautiful plants, by the way. Must take a lot of care to keep something thriving in such a cold environment." I was heading for the door when she stopped me. Richard hasn't met you yet. It would be rude to leave. So I sat back down. 10 minutes later, Richard shuffled in with his ornate cane, a faded relic of a man who'd once been powerful. At least he used my name. He asked about my work, and when I proudly told him I'd been a waitress for 23 years, he nodded. Honest work. Victoria shot him a look that could have frozen fire. To them, I was nothing more than a situation to manage. That's when footsteps echoed in the hall. Thomas appeared, announcing that my daughter had arrived. Sarah swept into the conservatory with the confidence of someone who commanded cameras for a living. She kissed my cheek, then turned to Victoria and Richard. Sarah Williams, Dorothy's daughter. Your granddaughter, I suppose. The recognition on their faces was instant. Fame was something they couldn't dismiss as easily as they had dismissed me. Sarah sat down beside me, her smile sweet, but her words sharp. You know, every birthday and holiday, Mom wondered if you thought about her. Now we know the answer. You didn't. You don't regret a thing. You're treating her like she's here to steal the silver instead of meeting the woman you abandoned. Victoria's response was cold. We owe her nothing. She's lived her life. We've lived ours. Sarah leaned forward, calm but deadly. You're right. You don't owe her anything. But I did some research on the plane. Public tax records show you've donated millions to children's charities over the years. $3 million to St. Catherine's Home for Children in 1959, just 2 years after my mother was born. That's where she grew up. The room froze. My heart pounded as Sarah listed donation after donation, tens of millions over decades to orphanages, foster care agencies, children's hospitals. So you gave away your daughter, then spent nearly $30 million trying to help children just like her, but not one penny to the child you actually abandoned. Richard muttered. We were trying to do good. No, Sarah cut in. You were trying to buy your way out of guilt, and it didn't work. Before the silence could settle, the conservatory doors burst open. My half-brother James stormed in, sweating and furious. What the hell are you doing? You let them in? Do you know what this could cost us? James's panic filled the conservatory like a thundercloud. His suit jacket was wrinkled, his face slick with sweat, his voice sharp as he barked at his parents. You actually let them in? Do you have any idea what this could cost us? He caught sight of Sarah and me, his eyes widening in recognition before narrowing with fury. This is a disaster. Everything we've built could be ruined if this gets out. Victoria, still composed despite the tension, gestured toward me with a stiff hand. James, meet your half-sister Dorothy and her daughter Sarah. He barely glanced at me before his gaze locked on Sarah. Recognition flickered. After all, her face was splashed across movie posters and magazine covers, but even her celebrity glow couldn't distract him for long. You don't understand, he snapped. I just got off the phone with our attorneys. Someone's been digging into the family trust. Professional inquiries. This isn't a coincidence. His glare cut straight at Sarah. I assume that was you. Sarah's smile was pure Hollywood charm, but her words were sharp as a blade. Actually, that would be my business manager, Patricia Chen. She's very thorough. When Mom told me she was coming here, I asked Patricia to look into things. Turns out, she has a background in finance, used to work at Goldman Sachs. She knows her way around family trusts. James's face paled. What exactly did she find? Sarah tapped her phone, scrolling casually, as though she were reading off a script. Well, your grandfather was apparently much smarter than you realized. When he set up the Ashworth Family Trust in 1952, he included something called a bloodline protection clause. That means any biological heir who can provide DNA evidence is entitled to an equal share of the family assets. My breath caught. I had come for answers, not money, but suddenly the stakes shifted. How much are we talking about? I asked quietly. Sarah glanced at me, then back at her phone. The trust is valued at around $1.8 billion. James gets 1/3 as the acknowledged son. The remaining assets are divided equally among any other biological heirs, which means, Mom, you're entitled to roughly $600 million. The room erupted with emotion. Victoria made a choking sound, clutching the armrest of her chair. Richard's knuckles whitened around his cane. James's face flushed, deep red. That's impossible, Victoria sputtered. We would have changed that clause years ago if we'd known. You couldn't, Sarah replied smoothly. The clause can only be removed with unanimous consent of all living heirs. Since you never acknowledged my mother, you never had her consent. Your grandfather made sure of it. James was pacing now, his hands shaking. This will destroy us. The board, the shareholders, every deal we've ever made relies on stable family control. If it gets out that there's been a hidden heir for 67 years, it will unravel everything. Sarah rose from her seat, circling the conservatory with the confidence of someone on a courtroom drama set. So let me get this straight. Your parents abandoned their daughter because she was inconvenient for their business plans. And now you're panicking because acknowledging her might be inconvenient for yours. Sounds like history repeating itself. You don't understand the complexity, James protested, his voice almost breaking. Oh, I understand perfectly, Sarah cut in. I work in an industry where one scandal can destroy everything overnight. But the difference is, I don't sacrifice family to protect my bottom line. She pulled another folder from her bag and laid it on the glass table. Patricia also found some of your recent business activities, James. Property transfers to offshore companies, restructuring debt, moving assets. Almost like you were preparing for this day. Richard's cane clattered to the floor as he gasped. How could you possibly know about those transactions? Sarah's eyes didn't waver. Patricia has friends at the SEC. When you shuffle that much money, it leaves a trail. The question is, why were you preparing for this if you didn't expect it to happen? The facade cracked. Victoria, who had remained cold and distant, suddenly looked old, frail, almost frightened. Her voice was quieter when she spoke. We always knew the clause existed. Our lawyers searched for decades, but there was no way around it. Sarah nodded. Your grandfather was brilliant. He wanted to make sure his fortune went to family, real family, not just the heirs who happened to be convenient. She turned to me. Mom, you're not just entitled to money. You're entitled to a board seat, voting rights, and full access to the family business. James let out a strangled laugh that sounded more like a sob. She can't just walk in and take over everything we've built. Everything you built? Sarah's tone hardened. From what I see, you inherited an empire and coasted on your grandfather's vision. My mom built her life from nothing. That's the real accomplishment here. My phone buzzed in my purse, and I pulled it out. A message from Patricia appeared on the screen. My hands trembled as I read it aloud. Patricia says we have a problem. Someone at the Ashworth legal firm has been asking questions about me. They know about my visit. James turned scarlet. I called our attorneys the moment security informed me. We have rights, too. We can protect ourselves. Sarah's laugh was cold. Protect yourselves? From what? From acknowledging the daughter you threw away. This is extortion, James spat. Financial extortion, plain and simple. I rose slowly, feeling the weight of every year and every unanswered question. James, I didn't know about any inheritance until 10 minutes ago. I didn't come for money. I came for answers. For 50 years, I've wondered why I wasn't wanted. I wanted to know if you ever thought of me, if you ever regretted it. My voice caught, but I pressed on. I wanted family. The silence was suffocating. Finally, Victoria spoke, her voice stripped of its steel. We were 25 and 27. Richard's family business was collapsing. My father threatened to disown me if I didn't marry someone who could save us. A baby would have ruined everything. I looked at them, my voice firm but quiet. So, you built an empire. Congratulations. Was it worth it? Richard's lips trembled. We told ourselves you'd be better off, that someone else could give you love and stability. Did you ever check? I demanded. Did you ever try to find out? Their silence was answer enough. Victoria's silence was deafening, but it spoke louder than any words. She sat with her chin raised, eyes glassy but unyielding. Richard, however, looked broken, his cane trembling in his grip. Sarah leaned closer to me, her hand covering mine. Mom, you don't have to hear any more of this. We can walk away right now. You've got the truth. You don't need their approval. But before I could answer, James slammed his fist against the glass table, making the china teacups rattle. No, you don't get to walk away. If you think you can just swoop in here, claim $500 million, and destroy our family's reputation, you're out of your mind. His voice rose to a near shout, and for a moment, he looked less like a polished heir and more like a desperate man cornered. I'll drag you through every court in this country. I'll bury you in so many lawsuits, you'll wish you never showed up.